Stevens Point Historic Preservation Design Review Meeting, recorded April 9, 2024.
Okay, call to order the Historic Preservation Design Review Commission for April 9th. It is 5:00 p.m. Roll call.
Siebert.
Here.
Monk.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Calnan.
Here.
McFarland is excused. Malewski.
Here.
And Cutler is excused. So we've got 5 members, which is a quorum.
Okay. Number 2, report of the February 6, 2024 meeting of Historic Design Review Commission. Any a motion to accept the minutes?
I move to accept the minutes.
Okay, thank you. A second, please.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions or whatever? I'm seeing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, number 3, public hearing and action on a request from Michael Moore representing R.A. Cook excuse me, and J.I. Altenberg Cooperative to designate the property located at 2041 Madison Street as a local historic site consistent with Chapter 22.061. I declare a public hearing open. Anybody?
Oh, I'll give a quick
Go ahead.
background
Quick
first.
overview.
Yep. So this is a request that hasn't been brought before this commission in quite some time, that being a local landmark request. So the image I'll start on the right-hand side of the screen is our list of current local landmark sites, the properties, address, year of construction, and the approval dates. So you can see the last time that this commission and the Common Council authorized the listing of a building onto the as a local landmark was back in 2007 for the synagogue. So it's been almost 20 years now since there's last been a local landmark request that's been brought before this commission until tonight, which we have the property that we have outlined on this image over here. So this would be Madison Street, Monroe Street, the former Altenberg Dairy Building, if you folks are familiar with it. There's a lot of detail, a lot of really good information that was included in the application provided by the applicant, but have some pictures of the site. This is just taken off of Google Maps, so it's a couple years outdated. Some quick hard facts: year of construction of the building was in 1892. Total building area is just shy under 13,000 square feet in size, and then the facade material is predominantly brick that you see. Again, this would be the front of the building. This would be off of Madison Street. The way back, you can't really see it on the screen here, would be Monroe Street. So the crux of the landmark designation process is that it would require a recommendation by this body to be brought before the Common Council for a final decision. The review standards in place to determine whether or not, in this instance, that it satisfies as being a local landmark would be the standards that's shown on the screen. Just note that not all 5 standards have to be met. Only 1 technically would have to be met if the commission would deem it so. So just one of the standards would have to be met in order for you folks to recommend approval of the designation request. That's about it. We'll start the public hearing. If the applicant or Bill, if you wanted to provide any testimony during the public hearing, then obviously we'll invite you to do so. But if not, I will kick it over to the chair.
Declare the public hearing open. Anybody wishing to address the commission, please stand and go over to the podium.
And you don't have to if you don't want to. Not putting pressure on you.
I haven't answered questions, but I think the application is fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay, so second call? Third call? Okay, I would declare the public hearing closed, and I would entertain a motion then from the commission.
And if I could
Go ahead.
chime in before a motion is made. The packet, my memorandum to you outlined kind of my initial thoughts. My thoughts would be both standards 1 and 2, again, that's shown on the slide, would be met for the designation request. What I ask is that if there is a motion to accept or to approve the designation request, that you outline what specific standard or standards that you believe are met, just so I can include that in the record and in the resolution brought before the council next week. So, just point of clarification.
Okay. Excuse me, Jen. Anybody on the commission want to make a motion to accept the proposal?
I move to accept with the criteria points that Adam has set, both 1 and 2.
1 and
yep.
2? Okay. Second, please.
I'll second that.
Carol, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none.
It's not so much about, that it's going to be designated, but I just wanted to mention the building almost was taken down, because it was in such bad shape. And the people that picked it up put it back together in large part, and the interior of it, particularly in that back extension, is a beautiful space. And they've just done a ton of work, and I would want to praise them and thank you for the investment that you've done, because the building would have been demolished. It would have been demolished by neglect. Yeah, demolition by neglect. So that's my comment.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion, or a vote then. All those in favor of accepting the request for a historic site, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Okay. Number 4, public hearing and action on a request from the City of Stevens Point to amend. See ya.
Quick and painless.
To amend Chapter 22, Historic Preservation and Design Review Ordinance of the revised Municipal Code of the City of Stevens Point. Said amendment amends Section 22.057 as it relates to demolition by neglect.
All right, so as I mentioned in the memorandum, for any city ordinances, there's always that habitual review of our current ordinances, just to make sure it's up to date with either current practices, current values, or just current policy altogether. As it relates to the demolition by neglect ordinance that we have in place right now, there are 2 different types of amendments proposed. One would be to swap out the job title of building inspection superintendent for building inspector. That's because that specific job title no longer exists. That was reclassified through the wage study that was approved by the council late last year. So this is more just a technicality than anything, making sure that the job title listed in the ordinance is up to date with current job titles. The second one, and this, I'll be blunt, was an oversight on my part back when we went through the ordinance process for this about a good year and a half ago. Our current ordinance says that if this commission determines that demolition by neglect is occurring, that property owner can appeal your determination to the council. However, there is not a stipulation that says a property owner must submit an application to appeal within X number of days. So in consultation with the city attorney and just reviewing other demolition by neglect ordinances amongst communities elsewhere in the state, it seems pretty consistent that they do use 10 business days as the threshold. So that's within the resolution within the packet, is to place that 10-day timeline for submitting an appeal to the council. So that's a quick summary. Happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Okay. So declare a public meeting open.
Public hearing.
Pardon?
Public hearing.
Public hearing. What did I say? Yeah. Public hearing open. Anybody wishing to address the commission, again, come to the podium. First call. Second. Third? No? Okay, seeing none, declare the public hearing closed. Entertain a motion to accept the proposed changes.
I'll motion to accept.
Okay, thank you. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further comments from the commission? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the proposed changes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you very much. Okay, number 5, a request from Stacy Nass, representing Opera House LLC, for a design review to install 3 awnings, create a door opening, and apply paint on the building located at 1136 Main, consistent with Chapter 22.052.
All right, and if folks are on the commission are following along, if you just want to go to page 33 of the agenda packet, just that includes the west elevation for this agenda item and then the north elevation of the building for the next agenda item, just so you folks have it in front of you. But as the chair mentioned, there's a couple of different improvements proposed for this building. This would be the 3 awnings. That would be, if you see where my cursor is, that would be the one on the north elevation of the building, where my cursor is circling. The second awning would be right here, right above the stairwell going down to the basement. And then the third awning would be right here along on the second floor on the west elevation of the building. The second one was the door opening. That's actually converting a window, an existing window, into a door. Technically, per the guidelines, that's something that would require this commission's review, and that purpose for that is to service this balcony that's shown on the second floor. And then the last item is the painting, and there's ample material that's included in the packet, but essentially this is in reference to this plastered area that you see where my cursor is, right on the very top of the west elevation of the building. You know, roughly about 8-10 feet or so in height is what I could gauge just based off of the width of the awning directly below it. And in conversations with the applicant, there were essentially a couple of different options at play to help achieve that goal of trying to extend that appearance of brick along this plastered area that I referenced before. So the first option that was mentioned by the applicant is sandblasting or using a high pressure treatment on it. You know, I'll be pretty blunt, from our commission standpoint, that is strongly discouraged, and that's something that I would have some nervousness towards, just in terms of the integrity of the brick behind the plaster and how that's going to keep with those high pressure treatments or with the sandblasting. The second option is applying the fake brick style. So this would be painting and stenciling this area so that it appears to be brick, even though it's just existing paint over the plastered area. That's ultimately the choice that the applicant went forward with. Since this plastered area has historically not been painted, granted that's because of a technicality, as this plastered area for over 100 years was not visible from the street because the Fox Theater was here at the time. Because this was traditionally unpainted, an unpainted surfacing material, this is what would trigger the need for this commission to take a look at it. What I'll say is just my initial thoughts as to the fake painting and stenciling the area so that it mimics like a fake brick style is that, you know, if this plastered area would have been a little shorter in height, say maybe 4 or 5 feet in height, I'd be more inclined to keep the plaster, because that ultimately acts sort of like a accent separating the second floor of the building to the roof line. Given the height of the plaster, that's something where, you know, frankly, in my opinion, applying this fake brick aesthetic for this plaster area, I think would be a better fit than just keeping the plaster out, basically keeping the status quo as it is right now. But again, ultimately, That choice is before you all as a commission. If you do choose specific for the paint option, there are a couple conditions I have on there, mainly that the applicant provides additional details as to the specific color that they would want to use, just so I can review and make sure it's consistent with the brick located below. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, we have a representative of the applicant in person here, too.
Did you say they have rejected the idea of power washing, or?
It was both them and myself.
Yeah.
Because
That's-
that would do some harm.
That would be disastrous.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't want to do that on anything other than steel.
yeah, yeah.
And the third awning, is that this thing here, this triangular thing? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah, so
Okay.
1, 2, and then 3.
Okay, okay. And why do we have to replace a window with a door? I assume it's this one.
To access the
We'll
balcony.
access the balcony.
Yeah, there's a
Oh,
balcony.
up here,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Looking in the wrong place.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I guess I have.
We'll just start with, not trying to cut you off,
Okay,
we'll just start with a motion first.
Oh, yeah, forgot.
Just so we get that covered first.
Yeah, entertain a motion to accept the proposals.
I move to accept.
Okay, a second, please.
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Malepsky, thank you. All right, comments, Carol?
Okay, the only question I have is, generally speaking, the awnings that we put out over entrances have that diagonal coming out to the front, as opposed to, when I drove past the back of the building, you know, it goes like this. I can understand it as far as the drip line, you know, but I guess that was my question, whether, it looks like the side ones are going to be the other direction, right?
Correct.
Name?
Yep, I'm Greg Goki. I represent the Opera House LLC. Yes, the ones on the side, you'll see the one that goes over the larger
Right.
area. That one is intended to come out this. The other one is the exact same style as the back, and once again, it's for the same drip line considerations.
Okay, all right. And so I noticed that you're going to cover it with the front and the sides with canvas? Is that what I read?
The material, yeah, it's the same material we used on the front.
Oh.
On there, it's the approved material you're allowed to use on those awnings. It's supposed to be sun resistant, it's black, it should maintain the color throughout and maintain that same look you see across most of the buildings in that area.
I guess one of my questions too is, because it is in the back of the building,
Providing
why would you-
additional and clarifying.
there's oftentimes metal awnings, you know, on old buildings. Why are we putting canvas on it? I mean, when I look at the back of that building, it's really nice looking the way it is. It is so clean looking. And I guess my question is, in this circumstance, I can understand somehow over a storefront on the other side, but this isn't over a storefront. It's over stairs and it's over a door.
Yeah,
A lot of awnings at the turn of the century, though, were canvas. That's not atypical for that.
Certainly for storefronts, yes. Yes.
yeah, I think it goes back.
Because they would open them up, actually, you know.
And I think it goes back to the argument or the conversation that we've had as a commission for a while now, is to try to spruce up, add some TLC to the rear of the buildings here,
Right.
that I think.
And I understand that.
And I think those rear of the buildings are also kind of become a de facto front.
Well, they
Because
have.
just so many people, yeah, because the parking lot is there. I know people that walk back that way. You got the eating area at Goose. And so, yeah, I think that some of these, the back of some of these buildings are, become de facto fronts.
The stairway next to Goose there, between Goose and this building, has a metal roof on it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess strictly from a design guideline standpoint, either option is suffice. I think as we relate, just from an aesthetic standpoint, I tend to prefer more of the canvas style than a metal. More personal opinion, but again, it's ultimately
Historically,
your-
metal would never have been used anyway.
Historically correct. From a regulatory perspective, from our design guidelines, technically we allow either option. So,
But if you want to remain reasonably historic, then it's got to be canvas.
correct.
I guess my question is, up here, can that not be, I don't want to use the word chemical, but some sort of soap solution or something to clean that plaster and just leave it? 'Cause admittedly, it looks dirty.
Are you talking about to clean it and before applying paint, or just to leave it?
Clean it and leave it.
On that one, I have no idea if we could clean that or not. My biggest concern would be the same thing as trying to remove the plaster, is having no idea what is probably composing in it. I mean, we can say plaster all we want. We don't really know what that material is. We
Yeah.
could very well destroy what's in place and therefore then damage the brick behind it. There have been some of the brick on that building that have been perfectly fine. I mean, it'll stand for another 100 years without a problem in the world. And then others you bump into and it half crumbles. So that would be the biggest concern I would have, but I say it out of just what I've seen, no actual
I'm not
background.
proposing anything harsh, just like soap.
Yeah, in an honest answer, I just don't know.
Yeah, and I'll say strictly from a design guideline standpoint, technically, if it's a low pressure washing using detergent or some sort of, with some soft bristle brushes, say that 5 times fast.
I know the feeling.
Technically, that would be acceptable as it relates to the cleaning of the exterior of the building.
Okay. Any other comments?
I guess my sense is I'd almost like to see them try cleaning it first and see what it looks like, and I guess I would leave that, the determination then probably up to Adam and the owner, and see if the results are successful or not, and if not, then the next, I'm not a big fan of the faux painting typically, because it looks like you're trying to match, and it's really hard to do it well. I did look at some of the examples, and it's pretty impressive, but it kind of varies from application to application, depending on how much experience and the person that's actually doing the process. I would tend to, if cleaning with a soft brush and soap, and if that would create a nicer, I don't know that it would, I think it'd be more true to the original identity. If that doesn't look good, then I think the brick is better than nothing, but I guess that's my thoughts.
You can keep the motion as it is.
I guess my thought too is that it not be a light color, because I did go down there and look at it. Boy, that stands out. And it just, yeah, and I'm not real big on the full kind of thing either, that I'd almost prefer that it just be a color that matches the brick, so it doesn't stand out, But,
So you're saying just paint the plaster to not plaster and
Complementary
not,
color.
and not stencil it?
the
and-
faux thing is, the faux.
What about just cleaning it and leaving it?
Yeah,
If it works.
painting it a different color, because any color you're going to put on there, that hasn't been opened for how long? 3 years? 4 years?
When the
How long has the back of the Fox been gone?
2019.
2019, so 5 years. So somewhere after that, it was painted perhaps, right? Or that just showed?
No, that's,
That was over the top of the walkway that used to exist there,
Oh,
which at
okay.
some point
Okay.
above that had to have a covering. You can see it on the 2 exteriors.
Okay.
Where there was something that covered those
So
fire
that's
escapes.
old dirt then?
Correct.
It's old dirt, so it's not something that just got dirty?
Right.
No, okay. So I guess that's kind of my thought initially. I don't like the faux thing. I mean, you know, the Swissfication kind of thing and all of that. You know, sometimes it's better just to let it be, which is my idea about the awnings too. But because canvas awnings over a staircase, you know, anyway, you know, and painted a color, clean it and painted a color that matches the brick. And I think it would.
What about just cleaning it and leaving it?
Did you look at it?
The colors.
The color is so bright that you look at that sidewall, and that building has been transformed with the new windows. And it is amazing what the back of that building and the side looks like. It's a nice brick building and really clean looking, you know? And the problem is when you're coming, I came from the west in that parking lot, boy, that is a big section along the top there that if it would just blend in a little bit more, you know, you could almost have it a little bit darker color than the other, but the same, a little bit darker value, but the same color, the same chroma.
But of course, historically, it was just what it is.
Right, I know, but it was hidden.
It was painted, but it's dirty.
It's just dirty. Yeah.
Right, but it was hidden. I think that if it detracts from the rest of the building that has a lot of integrity and that part doesn't, then why would you let that part stand?
Because historically, it's accurate.
But it doesn't make any difference because it didn't show.
But that doesn't make any difference.
That was an interior space.
Still, that doesn't make any difference. Historically, it would be accurate to leave it
But
white
you
or
couldn't
whatever
see
color
it.
that is.
Right. But it detracts from the part that has some integrity. Has a lot of integrity as far as I'm concerned and what it looks like.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just simply saying it. Historically, that's what it would have been, is white.
But I tend to agree with Carol. It was an interior wall previously. I think the contrast between that color and the brick detracts from. They've done a really nice job renovating that building. You really have. I mean, kudos. And so Carol, I can't remember. Do we usually agree?
Right.
But yeah, no. But I tend to agree. If we're looking at leaving it as. So Tim, you would prefer it staying the same color but get repainted, cleaned and repainted?
Just clean it and leave it. If you can clean it. Now,
I was just going to say, depending on, I just have a hard time when you look at it, it's hard for me to imagine that even, I think cleaning would be a good idea just to create a good surface for adhesion. But everything else looks so good, I would really be hesitant to have something that's going to, and I understand what you're saying too. I mean, it does look more authentic. To try to make it look like a brand new surface maybe isn't ideal either, and so I understand that. It is becoming a de facto front facade, you're right, and that is one of the goals when we were taking a look at that on the backside of those buildings along Main Street, to encourage those backsides, and there's some real progress being made in that front.
Mr. Monk?
Wouldn't, like when doing something, what Malevsky is proposing would be, is that kind of, would that be like a cheaper option than doing the faux brick?
I'd like to think yes.
Yes.
You know.
A single color as opposed to
I
going brick.
would assume, that the time commitment alone would be a little easier.
Because I would think that, if it does, if there is a, if it is that way that there's a painting, then I'd rather do something that would be historical, but also just easier and more cost effective.
We'll have, Barry, you had a comment, and then I'll chime in real quick.
Yeah,
Afterwards.
and it's just a point of clarification and a question on, do we know the age of that material? Was that the original building?
I have no idea if that was part of the original building or not.
So painting it, my only concern is painting it anything may be problematic because of the paint being rejected from it being on brick that's from the 1800s. Second, I want to know if nothing that they have asked for is against the codes that we're talking about. Our preferences aren't necessarily germane to this discussion. If the person wants to paint it and it's appropriate to the guidelines, then.
Yeah, so the
Actually,
reason.
It actually is against some of our guidelines because depending on whether or not the colors that are using are.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
If they're part of
As long
the,
as they're painting within the guidelines.
right, they'd have to use, and I don't know if the 4 colors that they've chosen are on, it does say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full brick of highly artistic quality using Sherwin-Williams historical exterior colors to match it.
I
So
read
they
that,
are.
so I was wondering.
Wow.
Yeah, the reason why the painting aspect was brought before this commission is that since this was historically unpainted
Right.
surfacing material, even though it's now only recently, over the last 5 years, an exterior wall,
Understood.
that technicality makes it having to go before this commission. That technicality is why it technically doesn't meet current code, because they'd be looking to apply paint on a historically unpainted surface. Correct. So that's the reason why it was brought before this commission.
But
Now, it
if-
would be your choice to determine, in this case, to what extent of painting. If it's just the solid paint color that you talked about, if it's stenciling it.
Stenciling, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my question to you, maybe you don't know the answer. If we just left that unpainted and white, would weather, since this was interior, would rain, snow, whatever, destroy it?
Lester.
My answer at this point is the fact that it's been uncovered for at least 4+ years. We haven't seen any significant deterioration, but on the other hand, it looks pretty much the same as it did when the building came down. And my concern at the end of the day is it continues to look like the very smudgy, kind of whitish it is. So
it could be cleaned and,
And once again, I say, I don't know. Potentially, yes. It could be cleaned and look nice. Just
if
like
you were
painting
to-
it one solid color may protect it so it stays that way for the next 20 years, just like stenciling it would make it match a little bit more just due to the size of the area. But at the end of the day, the problem is we don't even know when that was applied to the brick. We don't know if that was 100 years ago, 50 years ago. We simply don't know anything about it because of where it was located, and I don't think anyone ever thought to themselves to record that information.
And it's not presently brick. It's some type of a plaster or something that's been applied over the top of a brick surface. So it's not a brick surface that would be being painted. It's.
I understand that. So there's
I
brick
know, but
behind it.
the
is what
very-
you're-
Correct.
Oh, no, I didn't think that. I'm saying that the request, from what I read, the request seemed to be all in order. The only real question was, I guess because it's not a solid color, do we want to approve the brick texture or the brick
The detailing, you mean?
detailing? Because
Yeah.
everything else, unless I'm mistaken, they did a good job of making the request. And it's not, if they want to paint it this color, this color, this color, that was their choices.
Yeah.
So they're asking us whether the faux brick is, I think that's the only question, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and what I'll say is, based off of the conversation that the 5 of you had, if the commission is supportive of the couple of different options that was presented, one being to clean it and apply a solid paint color, that would be one option, and the second option would be to clean it and then don't paint it at all. For either option, I would ask that that would be placed as a condition onto that motion that's already on the floor. So if there's if any one of you 5 would wish to put that as a condition, I think that would be the next logical step, is to have a condition, make a motion for an added condition second, and then discussion, vote on it. So.
Condition being clean it and leave it, or clean it and paint it?
That would be up to the five of you. You know, personally, I would tend to favor the clean it and then paint it, given the fact that I think really going back to Barry, what you mentioned before, is that ultimately it's the purview of you all to determine if there should be paint on in this case, historically unpainted surfacing material, even though with that technicality, of course. I think that technicality is what personally lends me a degree of comfortability in that case. If this was a case where this plaster was visible from the public for the last 100 years, this is a different story, right? But I think the fact that this has only become visible from the exterior over the last 5 years, that lends myself a degree of comfort there. So at least that's my 2 cents, but ultimately it's up to any one of the five of you to make a motion, one way or the other.
Either way, it's going to have to be cleaned, right?
Yes.
I guess I would make a motion that it be cleaned and see, my concern is even if once it's cleaned, is that going, because it was originally interior. I'm just worried if it's going to be able to withstand the weather long-term. I would like to see some type of, but and I don't know if there's somebody with the expertise of being able to give some guidance on it, but to have some way to make sure that the surface is impermeable so you don't have water soaking in and damaging. And I haven't been up there and had a super close look at it, but they've done such a nice job renovating this. I'd hate to see us proposing a solution that's going to 5 or 10 years from now result in parts of it staying, parts of it peeling, and I wish I had the expertise, but I do think there needs to be some type of an exterior sealed on it to make sure it maintains its integrity. I don't know. I'm going to withdraw my motion because I don't even know what I want. I agree with Carol. I'm not a big fan of faux things where you're trying to make it look like something it's not. So I'm going to leave it up to someone else because I feel like a crappie on the ice flip-flopping.
Well, whether you leave it or paint it, that might be a problem depending on what that material is, right? Isn't that what you're arguing?
I'm thinking some type of an exterior finish would probably, but again, I'm not an expert. I wish, well, I don't know if there's a consultant, someone that can be consulted that would be able to give a more definitive answer of what type of treatment would create the most long-lasting surface. And I don't know who that would be.
I guess I have another question. Since this was interior, water was never a concern.
Right.
Well, but it's been exposed for several
What
years.
I'm wondering is, can water get between whatever this stuff is and the brick beneath it or under it?
We, to this point, have not seen any of that, and it was exposed prior to it coming down.
Okay.
So, I mean, when I say there was a covering at some point in the past. You can see markings on the building as to where it was, how much it covered. Once again, we don't really know, and even from the photos and the diagrams and the old school renderings of the Opera House, we don't know.
What are these, along the top, there's black dots, there's 4 or 5 of them. What were those, do you know?
What is he showing?
Covering?
Here.
Would that be like the covering?
I don't know.
On the photo.
On the photo.
On the photo.
Yeah, that's not on the slide here. Yeah, I was going to say, if you just want to come up here real quick, just.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well, and if it's reminiscent, if you're talking these ones right up there, if it's reminiscent of anything on the Gallery Q building on the other side, you can see where there's what looks to be a tar mark that comes down. So there was some type of covering on there at some point. But I haven't seen any photos that demonstrate anything to this point. Not saying they may not exist, I just haven't seen any. So-
Is there any thought to some type of a coping or something to go along that edge to provide a drip edge so you don't have the chance to kind of cap the top, so you kind of lessen the likelihood of something soaking in and getting behind?
I'm trying to remember what's up on top of it right now.
Because you can't really see.
I'm not going to lie to you, I don't go too close to the edge.
It's a good life motto.
I want to say there is a cap up there that helps channel away water, and that's my foggy recesses in my memory.
Because I do think that that would be important as well. Tim, I think your concern is justified. You don't want to, all of a sudden, if it's remained solid for 5 years, and we can knock on wood, but you do want to make sure nothing gets behind.
I will make a motion.
Pardon?
I will make a motion, if we're making a motion.
For an additional condition?
Additional condition.
Yes, yes. And I move that, obviously, that it be cleaned, because if it's going to be painted, it would have to be cleaned. And that when you're up there doing the cleaning, that you make sure that there's some kind of topping on the edge of the building there, so that that upper edge of that plaster, whatever it is somewhat protected. And that it then be painted the color that is similar or a little bit darker, somewhere in there, of the brick below it, without the the faux decor.
Okay, a second? Now we got, do you want this to an what's that word? Addendum to
Addendum.
his original
Yes.
motion?
Yes.
Is that agreeable?
That'd be, yeah, I mean, that would be the verbiage, yeah.
Is that agreeable to you guys? You made the motion in the second.
Did you make?
I didn't.
Who made a second?
I didn't make a second.
I was going to say, I don't think there's a second.
I don't think
I'm
there
not
was a
sure.
second on the first time around.
Oh,
The first time we did, Peter made the motion, I have, and
Yeah.
then Carol,
Right,
you
right.
made the second for the initial motion. This would be
Right.
for the added condition.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Carol, you made the motion, then we need a second for the added condition that Carol just said. And if we want to repeat.
He has to agree. The original motion guy has to agree that this is an addendum to.
He can agree, and then it doesn't require a vote. If he doesn't agree, then at least one other person has to second, and then it goes to a vote.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we still need a second.
correct.
Well, he first decides whether or not it's a friendly amendment or not.
Friendly amendment.
Yeah, it's a friendly amendment, yeah.
Okay. I'll
I guess that's
second.
what I was getting at. Okay,
Will agree?
well, he seconded it, so yeah. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay.
Oh,
Well, we
Next
got a second
agenda
one.
item
We
is
got a
for-
second one here.
Yeah.
Don't run away. Okay, number
Split it up, Billy,
six. A request from Stacy Ness, representing Upper House LLC for a design review to install 2 awnings and steel stairs on the building located at 1124 Main, consistent with Chapter 22.052. Okay, entertain a motion to,
Quick background I'll give.
Oh, that's
So awnings, basically same design as the other 3 awnings that we reviewed for the last agenda item, with the exception that this awning in the central part of the building is a little bit wider, 10 feet in width, versus the others, which were 7 feet in width. The stairwell that's leading from grade to the second floor for the balcony. The one thing I'll add in, this gets brought up any time that there's a improvement focused on accessibility. Accessibility requirements are a tricky business as it relates to you folks as a historic preservation commission, and that, the purpose for the stairwell is from a building code requirement. It's likely a fire code requirement as well, that from our design guidelines that speaking about our design guidelines, we don't prohibit those types of requirements because, frankly, you as a commission would be unable to because there's other codes governing that. You would have to regulate and try to the best of your ability, make sure that that application, in this case a stairwell, is aesthetically pleasing for the other architectural features that are located on this north facade. I think in this case, I'm comfortable with this case, with the stairwell in this case because, A, it's on the north-facing wall versus that of the storefront, and B, that the appearance of it, so black steel, is consistent with that of the balcony that's located on this building and the other building that we discussed during the last agenda item. So my recommendation is to approve. There's a couple conditions as well, honestly, pretty standard conditions that were verbatim what were included in the last agenda item. So any questions, happy to take them or defer to the applicant as well.
Just one quick one. The lower stairway, does that go into a basement?
Yes, it does.
Oh, okay. So it's not on the exterior?
There's an exterior from the court where was originally the seating area and the Fox, that actually is leading down into the basement, which is the purpose of the awning that was put on the other building, is to keep rain from collecting down there.
This would be that stairwell.
No, I'm talking about this.
That's leading down to the basement.
Yeah, but that's not exterior.
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But there's no door there.
There is a door there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, then we just need a motion. Yeah.
Yep. A motion to accept the proposal?
I move to accept.
Okay. A second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other questions for gentlemen?
And I don't know whether I've missed it on these plans. How deep is that balcony? Do you know?
I'm trying to remember off the top
Is
of my
it,
head.
is
I wanna
it
say-
narrow? I mean, is it?
No, it's not narrow.
No.
It's, the intent actually behind it was to to mimic the balcony that was on the interior of the Opera House
Oh.
on the second floor.
So it's-
What we're attempting to do, and I'll give you the overall giant as we come back, is to pay homage to the history. So that is supposed to be the balcony, and we'll actually, when we stamp the concrete, we're going to put a circle in the middle that's supposed to be about where the chandelier used to be, which was in the center. It was supposed to be very beautiful looking. So the goal behind it is literally to pay homage to its past. And to give us an exterior space on the second floor for people to come outside and enjoy the view of the beer garden.
So you think it's 5 feet, 10 feet?
Oh, no, it's 20, I want to say. It's
Okay, all
a
right.
significant
So it's really-
structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess then the question is, the piers that you have below there, do they have some heft to them?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, just, I mean, on the picture here, they look really skinny.
So you see 4, I want to say it's either 8 or possibly 12 total if you were to look at the overhead. It was an impressive number when they originally designed it.
So-
And I'm saying from the last time I looked at the overhead drawings. They're,
So are they metal supports? Is that what they are?
yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. All right, that was the only question I had.
Yeah, I think for assembly, they have to be rated at 100 pounds per square foot, so it would require quite a hefty, yes.
Anything else? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to accept the proposal. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
I have some signs in my garage that say, "Save the fox if you want them."
I'll take one. Seriously,
Yeah, all
for
right,
the historical society.
yeah,
We're going to do something new with the sign when we get done, too.
right.
I can't wait to see that.
Thank you all.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, number, what are we on? 7. A request from Jessica Stroley, representing Amethyst Maine LLC, for a design review to replace wood siding on the property located at 1141 and 1145 Main Street, consistent with Chapter 22.052.
Right. So just for a point of clarification in terms of location of 1141 and 1145 Main. So this would be, 1145 would be the salon that's located, let's see, this would be 2 stores to the west of the Big Garlic. So Big Garlic would be right on the corner here, kind of where my cursor is circling. It would be this building, and then this would be the building in question, 1141 and 1145. So the applicant owns a number of these buildings along the south side of Main Street and is looking to do some repairs to the wood facade. There's various areas along the storefront here where the wood's rotten, and they're looking to splice the rotten portions and then replacing it with wood, with the one exception is they did request to replace the wood facade for the 1141 and 1145 building here, essentially to mimic the design for the building adjacent to it. So this is where my cursor is circling, and what's noted on page 49 of the agenda packet. The specific facade material has not been decided. They've been kind of floating between a steel or aluminum facade material. I guess initial thoughts on my end is that, first, why is this brought before the commission? Is that any sort of material change in the facade would have to be reviewed and considered by this commission. If this was a like-for-like replacement wood to wood, this wouldn't have to go before you all. This would just be an administrative review. If the commission would have any degree of openness to material change, my advice to you all is that it would apply just for this area within this red rectangle. The reason for that being is that you can see just under the storefront windows here and directly above where my cursor is showing here, there are some details etched into that wood facade that, from a design guideline standpoint, any sort of swapping out of facade material can be done, so long as, if it's a like-for-like in terms of material or not, so long as it's not removing any architectural features present on that front facade. In this case, it's pretty evident, in my opinion, that these are elements that should be preserved, that should be retained. So this would be areas that I would recommend keeping as is as wood. If there's any splicing that would need to be done, if there's any portions of that wood that's rotten, recommend splicing it so you can keep those details intact. In this area, in the rectangle, red rectangle, there are none of those architectural details, and frankly, this would be the location where any wall signage would be placed, which naturally in and of itself would hide the facade material that would be located behind it. So I guess that's my 2 cents. If there's any degree of openness to changing the material from a material other than wood, I would recommend it focusing solely on that location noted on the screen. If not, if you're not supportive of it, then obviously that would be the motion to deny the request. So
Can I make a motion as chair? Yeah, okay, I make a motion to reject because of to leave it as wood. So to reject the application.
Okay, let me give you a second.
Yeah. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Comments?
What is that material that's there right now? It's some kind of white stuff. What is that? What is that section on the building right now? Because that's right over that storefront, over the windows. It's white, isn't it? It's white something. Because then there's another cursor across the top of it, which is wood, which is falling apart, and you can see holes in there that behind it is the brick.
Yeah, and you can see, so this uppermost, I think I referenced it in the report, is the uppermost segment, just since I had no other way of better phrasing it. So some of these rectangular details that you see where my cursor is below the storefront windows, those are evident on this northernmost segment as well, more so on this western half than the eastern half. So that would be my grounds to say that has to be retained as wood because of those details in place. But I guess as far as the
The upper
whites.
part, you're saying,
What was that?
the upper part, that upper part, right?
Yeah, the uppermost segment, yep. There has to be a better.
You're speaking of the section above?
Yeah, this
The-
part right here.
Above the
Right here.
above the rectangle.
Which is actually falling apart.
Well,
So I guess I'm not sure,
You're denying that they replace the part inside the red with something other than wood.
Correct.
May I ask why?
Because it's historically accurate. I mean, that's
Is it-
what we're here
Is
for.
that plywood?
I have no idea. Is it? Do you know?
Behind the
Because
What
that's,
kind of wood is it?
that's not,
specific type, I don't know.
no, but that's not a finished wood that would have been traditionally there. That's just for signage.
there was
Correct.
probably windows there at one time.
So if it's just for signage and it's been put there in the 1960s, it's not historically accurate.
Actually, it is, because it was modified historically, and this is what we have. So we
Okay,
either
so we're-
maintain that or we don't.
Right, no, and I know that's our mandate, but we also talked about allowing newer materials in so they wouldn't have to replace them every 10 years because of our weather and the current
Well, and we could
conditions.
replace the whole building too, for that matter, but, I mean, come
I'm not going
on.
to win that, so.
But even if we replace that, you've still got wood above it that we're
I'm not
not.
suggesting we take away any architectural features. I'm saying if that's a piece of plywood that was put up there in the 70s, specifically for whatever, and it's been painted over the years, unfortunately, it's falling apart, do we really want to save that? But I understand that you're saying it's historical, we're going to keep it, so.
And I guess maybe
That's
just
the
point of
end.
clarification, I think what, Tim, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're getting at is more so that the material would stay the same, that they can remove any rotten materials.
I understand that.
It would have to be wood, not of.
I understand that.
Okay.
So if, again, to go back to what Carol was asking about, this part that's in the red, the box,
Yeah.
is it the same stuff as above it?
No.
I mean, is it all one big piece?
No.
or-
It's too, as far as my knowledge is, no, it's still wood, but it's of a different type of wood, essentially.
It doesn't have any definition at all.
Correct. Yeah, 'cause, I
Has
mean,
no definition in that lower part.
There's no details from what
There's no
I
detail.
saw.
In the box you're talking about?
in the box.
In the box.
correct.
The box
Only
has
in
no
the box.
details.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think is worth mentioning as well is we now have access to a architect whose historical preservation is his expertise. He actually, when we used to be a Main Street community, actually was involved in some of the design and redoing of some of the facades on Main Street. We became a Main Street community again, and just were approved this past less than a year ago. And access to that architect for facade and stuff is free. And that, I'm not sure if all the businesses are aware that they have access to that resource either. So there'd be somebody that would be able to take a look at things, has a ton of expertise and experience in dealing with old buildings and facades. And I think we need to, that's become, as
Leverage
we're
it.
going through all this, we need to make sure that they become aware that they've got access to that resource, and it hasn't, I don't think we haven't done a good enough job making sure that, we've done presentations in a couple different places, but I think that needs to, our Main Street person she's only been on board since January 3rd. So, I mean, this is all fairly new. So we have a downtown manager and we became a Main Street community, and so there's a lot of good things happening, but I think we can maybe help people make wise decisions too, and it's a resource that
So you're suggesting we delay this and have her look at that? Is that? Table it, in effect?
I guess I'm a little nervous just not knowing what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, because I think from Joe's, I don't want to speak for Joe, of course, but I could see Joe say, you know, there's a couple different types of materials that could work so long as, you know, that's one layer, what type of material is being used. The next subsequent layers beyond that are going to be, are there any sort of detailing that would be in place? Are there any, you know, what's going to be the color of it? Are there going to be any, anything etched into it or bordering or casings along the perimeter of it? So I guess that would be my one point of concern is that, you know, I could see him say, you know, wood would work, but also.
I just wonder too, and Carol kind of hinted at it as well, there's a good chance there's windows behind there. There was a lot of times, that was a common part from the seminars and stuff that I've attended. A lot of times, there was a whole bank of windows going across that sort, and the present owner might have no idea that even exists. It could end up being a really, really cool architectural feature. So in some ways, I think Joe would come and he'd take a look, and he would probably have a good. My guess is behind that, and you're right, it probably is a piece of plywood. But a lot of times in the 70s, they put a piece of plywood over and covered up some really amazing architectural detail, and so.
We found that with Pikert's Meat Market across the street.
Yeah.
If you remember that one.
So, but I don't know what's the best route.
Yeah, I would say, I guess, Pulse, so actually, no, we got a motion in a second, so we can still have discussion. I guess Pulse from the commission as to keeping the material as is, a wood for wood, or changing material. Because I think if there's nervousness, if there's some uncomfortability amongst the commission of changing it from one type of material to another, then from wood to another material, then I would say, I mean, the motion on the floor is to deny it. Obviously, I mean, pass it as such, and then, you know, encourage the applicant to do a wood for wood swap in terms of the area that's rotten or whatever. If there's a degree of openness to a change in material from wood to something else for that rectangular area, then I would say placing a condition saying that, you know, the applicant would work with myself as the designated agent along with Joe into seeing from a design standpoint what is something that could work. I would recommend adding that as a condition if there's a motion to approve, or if this motion would fail and the voice of the commission would be to recommend approval of that change of material. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. That's kind of where I'm thinking of, depending on the route that the group wants to take.
I just have one other comment. That building, that segment is part of the corner building, right? That is part of Garlic on the corner, right?
It's technically all one parcel, yeah.
It's one whole building when it was built, right? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the windows that are on Strong's Avenue, you know, that expose the whole window there, and they didn't make those windows bigger, right?
As far as I know, no.
No. So on the front on Garlic, you can tell that part of the windows were closed in.
Yeah.
So I think originally the window was from where the brick stops to the bottom section, all the way along there. These two storefronts here, actually there's three, the way it's divided up.
Yep.
they were all done pretty much at the same time, it looks like, and they just made the windows smaller because you can see the brick in that higher part. So that whole segment, the section we're talking about was a solid window, because that building is a little bit newer than some of the other buildings on the streetscape there that do have those smaller windows, like Bonnie's Place, Geppetto's had those smaller windows on top. And I think it's just somewhere along the line that changed to a larger showcase window in the front of that building, because those windows are like that on the side on Strong's Avenue. They go to the brick. And they didn't change that when they put those windows in. They didn't make the windows bigger, right?
Yeah.
So I have a hunch that behind there is just some plywood, because they took out the old windows and put in the smaller ones as a filler.
Yeah, and what I'll say regarding the conversation about the window, or about potential windows, at least the historic photos that I've seen, part of it's crummy, because I don't know what was happening with this building, that a lot of times the pictures were taken, there was always something blocking it, which just like another side note. But I guess what I'll say strictly from a design guideline, from a regulatory perspective, is that since there's wood right now, if the applicant would want to swap it out like for like wood to wood, technically it would be out of bounds for the commission to say, hey, there's historic facts that there would have been a window behind it. We want you to swap out this wood for a window. Since it is wood currently, was it a good practice back in the 60s, 70s, whatever? If this was the case for swapping out window to wood, no. Strictly from a design guideline standpoint, since it's wood right now, it'd be out of bounds, in my opinion, to require them swapping it back from wood to window.
Right.
I just wanted to make that point, just since that's frankly a situation where our design guidelines may conflict with the historic relevancy of a building, because stuff has happened way back in the past that just didn't meet code at the time.
Point of information, the window replacement grant that we have available, if there are windows there that have been covered, would that program be able to be utilized to cover the cost of some of that project?
Yeah, it would, as long as there's evidence that there was window,
Right.
that there was a window in the past, correct? It would be.
Anything else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those.
If you just want to, maybe just for the sake of the commission, if you want to
State it.
clarify what the motion is.
The motion is
Just
to
so-
reject the idea of replacing wood with some other material, to leave it wood as wood. Okay? All those in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Barry, were you affirmative or negative?
He's a
I
negative.
was gonna go negative or abstain, actually.
Stand.
Okay, so 3-1
3, 1, 1.
and one
Abstention.
abstention.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to number what?
8.
8, yeah. A request from
We've gone through a lot.
Jessica Stroley, representing Amethyst Maine LLC, for a design review to install a gate near 1157 Main, consistent with Chapter 22.052. I'm assuming that's what this thing is, right?
Yeah, so that's a existing archway, essentially separating Big Garlic, that's shown to the right, with Arbuckles, which is shown on the left hand side of the photograph. So the applicant is just looking to insert a gate within this door opening. This would be pretty similar to, I'm trying to think what building this would be offhand, along Clark, just east of the square, that entrance into essentially a parking area where there's fencing that encloses that area. That was a type of request that was brought before this commission probably a good 10, 15 years ago. This is, in effect, a similar situation in that this type of gate, fencing, since this is visible from a public right-of-way, would require consideration from this commission. You know, the only thing I'll add is there's a few conditions in place. This is really more so addressing either some building code requirements specific to the second condition that the gate has to swing outward towards the street and not inward towards the alley. So really the condition is focusing on that conversation and also the fact that that alleyway is shared with some of the adjacent businesses as well. So I mentioned Arbuckle's, some of the other tenants within this larger property of the 1157 parcel. So some of the common conditions in here about exiting, about locking it, or keeping it unlocked is really to address that since there are multiple users utilizing that alley. So would recommend approval and kick it back to the chair for comment.
Okay. First, entertain a motion to accept the proposal.
So moved.
Second, please. Go. Okay.
Who is Barry? Okay.
I have a question. Why does it have to swing out instead of in?
I could not tell you why. All I know is it's our
would make more sense.
commercial building inspector said that it has to swing outwards. Why?
For exit.
Or egress, emergency egress, I guess.
Does it involve also fixing this?
There is a current non-compliance order in place that the property owner is aware of to rehab it. And I know they're working as we speak to figure out what type of means are in place to fix that.
Carol, is this the old entry to the clothing store?
No, that was on Main Street.
Yeah.
This is Strong's Avenue, right?
Right. Yep.
No, that was on Main Street.
Okay.
It was
So this is
on-
Arbuckle.
and that entrance.
Arbuckles and Big Garlic, yeah.
And that gate there is still there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay. Motion to accept. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okey-dokey. Motion passes. Number 9, discussion on the community preservation plan. Adam.
All right. Getting straight here. So I just wanted to spend a couple minutes to talk about where things stand right now with the community preservation plan and some upcoming events to be mindful of. And I know I emailed you this probably a week or two or whatever ago, but there are some public events scheduled for May, really transitioning into the second phase of the public engagement piece for creating this plan. So I just want to run down some of the upcoming events and talk a little bit about what's going to be the intention behind it. So the first one would be May 7th from 5:30 to 7. This is really focusing on an overview of what this preservation plan is. So talking about what the purpose and intent is of this plan and going through some of the different topics that would be discussed and ultimately included as part of that long-range planning document. So doing a social and cultural analysis, so talking about some of the different social and cultural groups that have came to be here in the Stevens Point area, talking about financial assistance and what are some of the ways that we as a city can try to leverage dollars either directly through the city or through indirect sources to individual property owners to help fund long-term maintenance of our historic buildings, education and outreach, tourism, focusing on a sense of place. So if somebody's walking, biking, driving downtown along our residential corridors, what are some ways that we can spruce up the livability of those corridors so anybody who's going down who's walking down those corridors, for example, know you're entering into a new environment, a new space, something that's historic. Land use and development, pretty self-explanatory. And then the last piece, focusing more on the implementation side. So, right, once we have this long-range planning document adopted, what's going to happen after the fact? So I'm going to be touching on that a little bit. Second public event would be the following week, May 16th. Same time, same place, focusing on a different conversation, and that will be more so a focus of the architectural design, architectural guidelines. So some of the topics that I figure on discussing would be, one, the administration of the design guidelines. So kind of shedding some light as to what is the procedures behind reviewing and approving any sort of exterior improvement, highlighting the fact that not every type of exterior improvement goes before this commission for consideration. There's a lot of projects that are reviewed administratively through myself. So that's going to be the first part. Second part is just talking more so about overarching priority areas as it relates to our design guidelines. I don't want to focus so much on specific nuances of architectural requirements, like what type of mortar is appropriate for this type of facade, right? You all are the experts. I'd rather have that conversation with you all as a commission, but some overarching priority areas. So some of the examples that I gave that I have on the screen here. So is there an interest amongst the public, amongst the general public, to try to incorporate some sustainability initiatives within our architectural requirements? Streetscape, are there certain types of streetscape enhancements that the public sees as lacking, or that we should prioritize as part of city policy within public right-of-way, or within, say, the front yard of a residential home, or if we're talking about our residential corridors? Third would be surveying efforts and priorities, so talking more so about the fact that 10, 15 years from now, we'll have to do another intensive survey of the city. So trying to get a sense of what are some priority areas here in the city that the public wants to see surveyed, in part to see if it still has historic architectural value, and then more so determining if there are new districts eligible for listing on the National Register. And then the last thing would be some ordinance amendments. Again, more of the nuts and bolts, the regulatory side of thing would be for this public meeting. So focusing on some topics such as economic hardship provisions. You know, should there be some language to say that if an applicant can prove that they can't meet a specific design guideline because of financial constraints, could they go before this commission and ask for essentially a waiver, similar to, I think Madison has a pretty good example of a economic hardship provision, so something similar to what they have codified in their ordinance. So that would be the second one, and then the third and fourth would be some walking tours. The first one on May 21st would focus on the residential piece, so really applying some of these topics that we talked for the first two public events into this third one. Focusing on the residential corridors, and then the fourth one focusing more on our commercial and multifamily areas, so essentially the downtown. Last thing I'll say is there's been a lot of enough work done over the last few weeks. So there's a press release that was sent out yesterday to try to shed some publicity on the work that we all as a commission are going to be undertaking over the next several months. And then also yesterday, I believe, is when individual mailers were sent out to every property owner within an existing local historic district, local landmark, and also those within a eligible district or an eligible landmark. Those would be eligible for listing on the National Register. So the mailers got sent out in the mail probably by later this week. Folks should start receiving them, really, again, trying to spread the word about what the purpose of this plan is, what are some of these public events that will be happening. And last thing I'll say is there's a public survey out there. Shameless plug. If there's any good souls watching this video at the hour and 18-minute mark that use this QR code, pull up the survey, please take it. And I guess last thing I'll say now is that my plan is, once we get through these public events, this probably will be maybe that first week that we come back from Memorial Day weekend is when I would like to have kind of a deep dive conversation with you all, kind of as a recap of what was all discussed during these public meetings, just to kind of pick your brain a little bit and bring what we all learned as a commission to the forefront. That would really be the last piece before I hunker down in a cave over the summer and start writing the document. So as it relates to those 4 public events, obviously, as I mentioned via email to you all, I can't force you to attend. Ultimately, this plan is going to be your plan. It's going to be implemented by you guys, considered by you guys. So I strongly encourage it if you all can attend, to attend, just because it'll make the conversations that we have in reviewing this draft document later this year really more wholesome. So any questions, I'd be happy to take it. I know there's a lot there.
Seeing none.
Dumped all at once.
Okay. Number 9, or 10, I'm sorry, we are adjourned.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.